Everybody, good morning. It's Bill Whittle Live. Good morning. Good morning here in California. Time just turned noon in California, making about 3 o'clock on the Eastern Coast, I think. Today is Wednesday, the 8th of March, 2017, and today we're going to be talking about Women's Day. It means something different overseas than it means here. Here it means a chance for people who maybe have a little too much time on their hands to go out and protest something that I'm not entirely sure I understand, so we'll talk about that. And then in part two, we're going to talk about the fact that Russian hackers, our friends, the Russian hackers have found, believe it or not, hopefully you're sitting down. I want you to, I don't want to have anybody faint from surprise, but Russian hackers have found out that certain Democratic groups have paid hush money in order to have them not reveal that they're connected to George Soros and they're funded from outside of the so-called grassroots organization. All that and more coming up today on Bill Whittle Live. Push the button, Neil, and let's get going. Okay. Before this gets any further here, let me just start off by making myself pretty much as clear as I possibly can. Hey, there we go. What I'm about to talk about does not apply to women in general. I'm talking specifically now when I talk about feminists in these cases. I'm talking about this fifth wave, eighth wave, 21st wave, whatever these wave of feminists are, that think that the best way to handle their suffering and their oppression is to have a big march on Washington on Women's Day. Let's start with the basics here. The idea is that if, in order to show the patriarchy how much women contribute to society, there was a whole line of things with advising women to do. Don't go into work, don't spend any money, and there was one other thing, I don't remember what it was, but it was a number of things that they basically insisted that women do, other feminists insisted that all women do, in order to show just how valuable women are. And I just want to start with this premise. I mean, to show how valuable women are, I mean, honest to God, this kind of thing is it's 1920s thinking. It's 100 years old, this idea that women can do things that men can do too. No fooling. Really? That's just amazing. You're telling me that women can do things that men can do just as like surely you don't mean things like drive a car or work in an office building, other than a secretary, obviously, right? You don't mean that. I mean, this is stuff that is 100 years old. And to the degree that there's resistance to this idea, the resistance to this idea is probably 40 years old. Look, I grew up in the age, which is probably worth an entire book or a treatise on the subject, but I grew up in the age of the fundamental transformation of attitudes in this country. One of them was towards women. One of them was towards minorities. One of them was towards a bunch of other things that I can't even remember now. But I'm the generation that had to go through it. I'm the one who was subjected to All in the Family. I'm the one who was subjected to Maude. I'm the one who had to come to grips with the idea that the world I used to believe in is not the way it is anymore, really, in a lot of ways. And this was when I was very young. Women make excellent pilots, and and on and on and on and on and on. So I just don't really understand how these progressives manage to find causes that are so out of date and old. They're just it's a miracle to me when you really think about it that a progressive can find something like this. We've got to show the patriarchy just exactly how valuable women are. Well, as a member of the patriarchy, let me just tell you this. In my days before I became one of the leaders of the patriarchy, and our patriarchal meetings are Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday night down at the American Legion Hall. But as a former member of the masses of people, now as a member of the controlling patriarchy, I've been working for women most of my adult life. In show business, we've had women producers, and some of them were good, and some of them were not good, just like the men producers. you can see I'm almost speechless about this idea that we've got to march. We've got to march to show the whole world, men especially, how valuable women are. Now, I have to be honest with you, I didn't know about International Women's Day until 2 or 3 days ago. And the reason I found out about it 2 or 3 days ago was because my fiance, who's Russian, says that March 8th is Women's Day. And I said, okay. She's, in Russia, you cannot buy flowers on Women's Day. There's just everybody is out buying flowers for women. Not a problem for me because I buy flowers for my fiance pretty much every day. Genuinely do. So in any event, we find out that across Russia anyway, Women's Day is a day where the men celebrate the women and take them out to dinner, and it's not just their sweethearts. It's not like Valentine's Day. It's not just, it's not just couples. It's everybody. The old babushkas get flowers, and little girls and everybody else. They all get flowers for Women's Day because they don't need, apparently in Russia, to be reminded how valuable women are. Mark Twain had a line about it. He said, he's talking about women, and I'm going to have to look it up, actually. I really am going to have to look it up. Because, in fact, I hate to have to stop the show in the middle of it, but this is worth it. Mark Twain was talking to a group of people in one of his speeches, and it was the subject of women came up. Women's liberation. He was a feminist, feminist. He was for equality. Here it is. Give me a second here. It's 1868. It's Toast to Women. Nope, that's not it either. In any event, I'm going to take one more chance to look at it. But look, here's the point I'm trying to make as I go surfing through stuff I should have had already. There it is. How far behind the times do you have to be in order to feel this way? Mark Twain was doing the speech, and I just found the one line I was looking for. I can remember most of it from memory. He says, "Women as wives, as cousins, they're convenient. As wives, they bear our children. Ours is a general rule. And what would men be without women? Scarce, sir. Mighty scarce." That's pretty much it. This is the reason I went to that quote, is because the idea that half of the population, more than half of the population, has to have a march on Washington in the year 2017 to show how valuable they are, to me, is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you want to do something to celebrate women and women in the workforce and women as equals of men and all of the things that original feminism was all about, equal pay, a chance to do any job they were qualified for, all of that, then what they should do on Women's Day is American women should do what they do on the other 364 days out of the year, which is pretty much everything. Pretty much everything. They go to work and they stay home. Some people are mothers, some people are career people, some women try to do both. There's more to this coming, believe me, but in terms of the actual political aspect of it, it's so self-evident to me what women do, and women do very well. Now, it's time to have a little talk about the gray area. And this is where I part paths with our friends on the progressive left, because unlike modern feminists, I do believe there's a fundamental difference between men and women. And one of the things that so amazes me about this difference is that the differences seem to come out pretty much equally. So when I say that the men and women are different, let's just be clear. I completely feel, and this is not a feminist position in my mind, this is just a simple position of anybody who values individuals, and individualism is my stock and trade. That's what I'm selling, basically. Anybody who believes in individuals believes that any two individuals doing the same job should get the same pay. Doesn't matter if it's a man and a woman to me. Doesn't matter if it's a Mexican or a Swede. It doesn't matter to me. It matters to me not the slightest what particular tribe you're from, what your sex is, what your race is. I don't care about your sexual preference. I don't care about your religious background. I don't care about anything in the society, because all of that stuff is none of my business. The only thing that's my business, especially when it comes to my business in terms of my business, is, are you good at what you do, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, I'm interested in hiring you. And if the answer is no, then I'm not interested in hiring you. And there's nothing to do with women or race or anything else like that. So the question is, are you good at what you do? Now, in virtually all cases in this economy of ours, women are capable of performing exactly as well as men. In many cases, they perform better than men based on the individual. There are some areas where women are at a disadvantage compared to men, and it's not a political disadvantage, and it's not an economic disadvantage, it's not a patriarchal disadvantage. It's a disadvantage in terms of biology. So here's the basic deal, folks. Whether you like it or not, ladies, or men for that matter, and especially you guys out there who think that the way to get these college chicks to think you're hot is to get down on your knees and basically hold their pillows for them. No, it doesn't work that way. Here's basically what we're talking about. Nature has the whole idea of sex in itself. I don't mean sex the act. I mean the idea of sexual division was basically a chance opportunity. It was going to happen eventually. The earliest life forms didn't reproduce sexually. They just basically split into other ones of their own. So why did natural selection and evolution favor sex anyway? Or if you're religious, then you already know the answer to these things. But I certainly believe there's plenty of evidence for evolution. So why are there two sexes, not just in humans? Why are there two sexes throughout all of species on this earth, basically, almost all of them? Why are there two sexes? Why not one? Why not four? Why do we have two sexes? And the actual reason is because having two different sexes drives evolution. It makes the evolutionary changes much, much faster because they become less random. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you have a group of lions and all of the lions are of one sex, then the lions will reproduce, and the weaker ones and the smaller ones will reproduce about as effectively as the bigger ones. And it's true that some of the smaller, weaker ones won't survive as much, and more of the bigger ones will slowly over time, and so on. And so the better genes in terms of survival, in terms of fitness for survival, get passed on, but they get passed on slowly. Because we have sexual differences, what that means is that a lion who is clearly the strongest, this is something that is discernible by lionesses as well as human women, and probably insects as well, or certainly in any kind of mammal can tell this difference, and reptiles as well. The reason sex developed and the reason sex is actually useful is because if you have lions, and instead of it all being just the unisex lion, now if you've got a male lion and a female lion, and the male lion is incredibly strong and obviously strong, then that particular individual gets to mate with more females, and that is what allows those superior genetic combinations to get passed on down through history, is the fact that males have to do some, in virtually every species, certainly in this one because I've got dinner plans tonight, virtually every species, the male has to put on some kind of a show. Now, it may just be a show of strength. It may just be that they're bigger. But in most higher level animals, the males have to put on a show, and it's either the bird that makes a perfect little house for the female bird and goes out and decorates it and does all that and says, "Come on in." She says, "Better one over the hill," or it's these trumpeting contests that the elephant seals have, or it's two rams or deer, elk, or whatever, banging their heads together to make noise to show which one's the strongest, which one's got the biggest set of antlers. And what they're basically doing here is they are showing that they've got the superior genes, and all the females in the group go swoon, and there you go. Now, when it comes to people, this is very different, obviously. Very different, because we have actual intelligence. We can modify our behavior. We're not victims of instinct and so on. So somewhere in here, in the last several years, feminists have decided that it's not fair that men are stronger than they are, as a rule. Now, if you can leap right up and say, well, I know this woman who could beat up a lot of guys, undoubtedly. But she's 4 standard deviations to the right. Men are stronger than women, and they're bigger than women, and they're faster than women. And I'm not done yet. But if you don't start with this recognition, then society doesn't make sense, and you end up with the kind of upside down world that we're in now. You end up with the kind of world where progressives are trying to convince little boys that they're basically defective girls, and don't run around so much and don't be so energetic and stop looking out the window and share more and all the rest. No, they're different. They're very different. And males are faster, generally speaking, certainly in this species, they're bigger, faster, and stronger. If you don't like that, that's fine. But if you don't like that, you have to be confronted with some evidence. And the evidence is, feminist ladies, or whatever you particularly care to call yourselves, the evidence is this. If you look at the fastest time in the Olympics for a women's track, fastest time in the 100 meters, the fastest woman on Earth can be beaten by most of the track stars on any college team, and many high school boys are faster than the fastest women in the world. The reason that we have a women's division in the Olympics, the reason that there are women's medals and women's sports in the Olympics is because if there wasn't, there wouldn't be any women in the Olympics. Unless it's a skill-based sport like shooting or something, in which case they're just exactly the equal of men and they're just as good at it. But if we're talking about things like running, jumping, basketball, swimming, all of it, they're just at that level, at the top level of achievement, there are no women that can compete with men. It's just all there is to it. I've seen very many times in my life where women were just amazed that a scrawny guy like me, when I was young, I was just 119 pounds or something, 6'1", that a scrawny little stick of a guy like me could lift these gigantic heavy suitcases, and they couldn't understand it. It's the structure, it's testosterone, it's all those other things. So does that mean that because they're faster and because they're stronger and bigger, does that mean men are better than women? Well, it certainly doesn't mean they're better than women in terms of morality, because if anybody who's ever been around women knows, if it weren't for women, men would be living in pits. We'd be flying through the air in supersonic jets, but when we're finished with our jets, we'd go home and we live in pits. And so women have shown now for the last 100 years that women are absolutely capable of doing the exact kind of job that men do. If you're talking about being a manager of a Walmart, or if you're talking about being an airline pilot, they're capable of doing everything that men can do, but they cannot adjust the biology of it. So when you get into things like, whenever you get into things like firefighters or soldiers or policemen for that matter, but let's go with firefighters. Now you got a bit of a problem. I always wondered why recently, when I was growing up, if there was a call for an ambulance, the ambulance would go out, the paramedics would go out and they'd get to the scene. Now, when the ambulance goes out, the ambulance is followed by a fire truck, by a big truck. And I've always wondered why that is, unless the victim is reported on fire. Hey, a man is on fire here in the street, he's in that case, you'd probably want to send the fire truck as well as the paramedics. But for heart attacks and things like that, why? No. Now, I've only heard this anecdotally, so I'm gonna put that preface out there and say I don't have this from a lot of different sources, but it seems to make sense to me. The reason they send out the entire fire truck behind the paramedics is that a number of paramedics are women, and they're just not strong enough to carry some of these people into the vehicle. So we have to send the men out to help them carry. Now, if a woman can carry the exact same amount of weight as a man, or let me rephrase that, if a woman can carry whatever the standards are for a man, whatever a male firefighter has to be able to carry in order to clear the bar physically, if a woman can do that, then she's a fantastic firefighter, and honest to God, she has my absolute 100% not only support, but respect. Not that she needs it. But when you start doing things like lowering standards in some areas, then your whole society gets a little worse. And I don't see any particular reason to do that, because there are things that women can do. This may come as a complete shock to those of you on the left. There are things that women can do that men not only are not as good at, they are simply, absolutely, simply incapable of doing it. And the first thing that comes to mind is we wouldn't be having this conversation without women, because ultimately women are the definition of a woman, the actual definition of female. We're talking about the sex now, not the gender. The definition of that is the ability to have children, the ability to have offspring. It's a two-part process, at least if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure it takes at least two to do this, but but it's the woman that is in fact the life giver, and we've always recognized this. And any civilization, as a matter of fact, you could come pretty close to this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go with it right now. In my mind, the definition of a civilization, the definition of the word civilization means that the men in that society understand that protecting the women for a variety of reasons is in fact their primary obligation in that society. Women and children first is not just good manners, it's survival based. And it's not just survival based, it's also good manners. There's a reason for it. There's a reason that the men lined up on the Titanic and had an hour to think about this. There's a reason why the men lined up on the rails of the ship going into ice cold water and put their women on the lifeboats. There's a reason for this, a biological reason. There's a moral reason for it. And that is the obligation that actual men have to protect women and other people who are weak and sick and unable to protect themselves. This is what men do. This is our job. And if you've ever met real men, and by the way, I've many years ago, I coined an expression for being in the dating scene in Los Angeles. And my description of dating in Los Angeles is very simple. The men are weak and the women are crazy. And that's how it works out here in progressive land. The men are weak and the women are crazy. And the weak men make the women crazy. And the crazy women make the men weak. And it's this death spiral. And you end up with these soft men who are just absolutely intimidated by women, and they're beaten down by women. And what they don't understand is what the women are doing when they're being that crazy and that aggressive with them is just like any other person. They're looking for boundaries. They want a boundary. They want this. They want it. Basically, what they want is they want to know where this guy's going to draw the line. I have a close friend who I'm not going to name here, who we were on a cross-country drive. We'd done it many times as teenagers, many times, driven the whole length of the country. And he came out here to pick up a bus or something for his transportation company. So the two of us drove back. We were in our 40s at that time. And I said to him, we're talking about this very subject, and he said, when my wife gets really mad at me, she goes into the bedroom and closes the door. And I said, well, you go after her? And he goes, no. He said, no. I said, well, why not? He said, because she's closed the door. She doesn't want me in there. And I said to him, Steve, the reason she closed the door is because she wants to see if you care enough about her to open the door. In other words, where's the line for you? Where is the line for you? And when you have this incredible kind of male weakness, the women will keep pushing and keep pushing to find out is this guy going to stand anywhere? Is he going to stand anywhere? Is there anything that he's not going to take? And they're looking for it. And if you don't understand this, then I'm sorry. That's just the way things are. And I understand all the charges are going to be leveled against me by the politically correct police, and I don't care, because what I found is even these politically correct women, even these really, really serious young, social justice warriors who are all about this, who are the people first in line marching out there in the street, they may not admit it to themselves, but they know inside that if they had a choice between some guy who basically stands there and says, march on and have a good time and all that, but seriously, this is kind of silly, and we're stronger than you are, and it's our job to protect you, whether you like it or not. We're going to get the bag for you and put it in the overhead compartment, whether you like it or not. If you say this offends me, we won't do it, because we're just basically doing what we're programmed to do, and that is to protect women and to make their lives as nice and as livable as we possibly can, and really mostly to be their heroes. So if you run into a woman who's a fifth wave feminist and hears that, say, I would never, ever, 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 ever go out with a man like that. I'd much prefer this guy who's sitting here sipping lattes and with his gigantic cup, that he holds in two hands while he sits in his red footies, and he's on a couch and he's sipping his coffee on Christmas. Here's how to tell your family about Obamacare. Pajamas boy. I don't care who you are. There's not a woman out there who prefers pajamas boy. There's a lot of women who are dating pajamas boys, and a lot of women think they prefer pajamas boys, but they don't. They don't. P.J. O'Rourke had the greatest line on this. It's an extremely, unbelievably politically incorrect thing to say, which is why I like it so much. P.J. O'Rourke said that, based on his traditional role of women and so on, he said, and his other political beliefs. He says a lot of feminists call him a Nazi, and he said, and that doesn't bother me very much because nowhere in the history of humankind have females ever fantasized about being ravaged by a man dressed up as a liberal. And, there you go. The Nazis are what happened when you have an overly masculine society. A society that is 100% masculine is cruel and destructive, and it's vicious, and it's heartless, and it's consumes itself, and there's no joy. No joy in a society where like Nazi Germany, where masculinity reigns supreme. And unfortunately, in our society today, I think femininity is reigning supreme. The entire idea of strength, the entire idea of male independence, the idea that in order to make men, you have to have fathers or father figures. That's an important distinction. Fathers or father figures who are willing to take young boys and take their natural abilities for strength and aggression and violence. All of these are built into us. We don't just get the speed and the strength just for nothing. The reason we're faster and stronger than women is because we're expected to go out there and fight other males. That's what we do. That's our job. So you have these some philosophical, some physiological advantages. And what are you going to do in exchange for them? In other words, if you're faster and stronger and bigger, then why? Well, in most of the countries around the world, throughout the history of the world, the reason men are faster and stronger and bigger is because they have to fight other men. And the result of that is that the women in their societies are property. They're property. And we see this many times in all these Islamic countries around the world and other countries as well, where women are property. The man, we're talking about for thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. This big, powerful guy, he's got his giant castle, and he's got all of these drachmas, and he has 17 camels, 14 horses, 7 cows, and 32 women. And that's what his livestock consists of. Well, that's not the society, and it's not really ever been the society, but it's certainly not the society today. So I'd be a lot happier if these women on the Women's Day March were protesting against those kind of societies against this one, rather than this one. And now, since I'm already so deep in the woods and made so many friends, there's one other thing about men, and I think this is pretty strongly backed up. Now, don't fall down. Let me just finish this, okay? Let me just finish this. We find that women they're more resistant to cold. Men and women have better endurance, and women have a higher threshold of pain, and women have better hearing than men, and so on. But when I say that men are faster than women and stronger than women, generally speaking, across the entire bell curve of a population, what you find is they're smarter than women too. But they're stupider than women as well. And this is something that's like, what? If you look at the distribution curve for intelligence, right? It's a bell curve. You get very, very smart people over here, and then in the middle you've got most people, and you've got very, very stupid people over here. It turns out that if this is the bell curve for women, the bell curve for men starts out here and ends out here. In other words, the outliers are more extreme. There are some brilliant men who are genetically smarter, as a general rule, I think, than women. That's why most breakout geniuses are males, at least historically. Now you could say, well, that's because women haven't had a chance, but Albert Einstein was working in a Swiss patent office when he figured out how the universe works. So basically what happens is nature can afford to experiment on males. They can't afford to experiment on males because we're expendable. We're expendable. It doesn't matter how many males there are in a society. It matters how many females there are in a society, because if you've got 50 females and 1 male, your society's going to grow. It's going to have some funny looking people. They're going to look like the kids with the banjos on top of the bridge in Deliverance, but you're going to grow. On the other hand, if you have 50 males and 1 female, you're in real trouble. This is just how it works. This is how it's built. So what you find is that men are on the one extreme edge. When we're talking about breakout genius brilliance, they tend to be more men than women, and I don't suppose this is going to take much convincing, ladies. On the other end, at the supreme end of stupidity, men own that in a big way. I don't think I've yet seen a woman on the internet, and I've seen a lot of internet videos. I don't yet see one woman who didn't say, hey, look at this, and then immediately, be killed in some horrible way. I've never seen them do stupid stuff like this. I've never seen them do stupid stuff like this. And this is basically the kind of the balance that we've come to accept here, right? It's that men can do amazing things. They're in the air. They're dreamers. They can design things. Women can design things too. I'm speaking in generalities. But there are some things they're utterly incapable of doing. Utterly incapable of doing. And when it comes to stupidity, and I'm talking about open mouth, drag your knuckles across the ground stupidity, men own that. That's pretty much it. And the same thing with violence, right? With violence. Virtually all of the violent crimes in the world throughout history have been committed by men. Almost all of them. Almost all of them. So it's like everything else. You've got pluses and minuses. So anyway, Miles Cirillo just said, hold my beer, watch this. Those are famous last words for low IQ individuals. And I've never heard it come from women, ever. They're too smart for that. So where are we today in 2017 as a culture? Where are we and where should we be? My feeling is we should be in a world of balance between masculine qualities and feminine qualities. And if you don't think there's such things, that's fine. You're welcome to have that opinion. But there are, whether you like it or not. And that means that the harshness and the cruelty and the militarism and the ruthlessness of Nazi Germany, which was pretty much 100% male, needs to be tempered. It needs to be tempered with mercy, and it needs to be tempered with grace and elegance and sensitivity and design, all of this stuff. And it needs to be tempered with the kind of courage that women have, which I think exceeds male courage in battle, and that's the courage of a single mom. A single mom working out there trying to do a job or two jobs, to feed her children without any help at all. I think that is the most profound courage in the world. I genuinely do. I think it's tougher than battlefield courage because you have to do it for 40 years. So there you go. But I'd like a world in balance. I'd like a world where men are not being punished for being strong, and a world where men are not being portrayed as oafs and idiots by advertising companies who feel that more and more women are controlling the purse strings and spending the money. I'd like to live in a world where the idea of strength is not automatically wrong. The progressive mind, if you are strong, you're wrong. And the progressive mind, the underdog is always right, always right. And that's just plain not true. So I'd like a world of balance is what I would like on Women's Day. I'd like a world of balance. And I think we were pretty close to that before these progressives came along, because in the world I live in, you don't need to have Women's Day marches. It's like having, it's like a day without women. What would that be like? It'd be like a day without electricity. It'd be like a day without water. What are you saying? What are you saying? Somebody makes a movie called A Day Without Mexicans or Immigrants or whatever it was. I forget what it was. I think A Day Without Mexicans. And you see all the things that Mexicans do, and that this way we're going to come on. A day without women is like a day without air. It's like a day without electricity. Nothing happens. Nothing works. We get it. So why don't we just stop all of this nonsense? And this goes into the transgender issue too. Why don't we just stop all of this bull that we've been hearing for the last 20 or 30 years? And why don't we do what our political philosophy tells us we should do, which is look at every single individual as an individual. If I'm looking for a sound designer or something on a movie, I don't care whether it's a man or a woman. I don't care if it's a transgendered person. I don't care about any of that stuff. Not at all. It doesn't make any difference to me if they're black or white, or I don't care whether they're atheists or religious. It doesn't matter. It matters to me if I'm going to hire that person for a specific job. I want the best person I can get, and the best person I can find, and the best person I can afford. And that is the ultimate form of justice, ladies and gentlemen. There's no such thing as social justice in my mind. Social justice is hurting one group of people for something that another group of people in history had done to a third group of people, and it's determined by the fourth group of people. I don't have any guilt over slavery. You know why? Because I don't have any slaves. That's why. Pretty simple for me. I want to look at people as individuals. And you will find some women warriors. My personal trainer is a Muay Thai fighter, And just so we're crystal clear on this, this girl could kick my ass. I mean, like, I don't mean like it would take a long time. It wouldn't be a slugfest. I mean, I'd be like, okay, here we go. Next thing you know, I've got a foot in my face and I'm down on the ground and I'm bleeding profusely. Does this invalidate everything that I've said? No, it doesn't. It doesn't invalidate it. She's worked her entire life for this. She's very, very good at it. She's extremely good at it. And she could kick my ass and kick the ass of pretty much everybody I know, but she probably couldn't kick the ass of the guys who also train their entire lives to be mixed martial arts fighters. So, how about we just have Individuals Day? And if we're going to have Women's Day, why don't we do it like they do it in Russia, which is civilized? And more, I find as I'm engaged to a Russian, I find out that they're in many ways, Russia is a better country than ours. In many ways, not in the ways that really matter, not in the big ways, but in a lot of little ways. They're much better read than we are, and they're much more serious about some things, and they don't seem to have these self-inflicted problems that we have. So in Russia today, you can't buy flowers because every single male in Russia has bought flowers for the grandmother or the woman or the wife or the whatever. So that seems like a nice thing for me. And what do we get in return, guys? You know, everything, right? I mean, we get everything in return. Everything. We get order, and we get peace, and we get tranquility, and we get civilization. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. I just think that we would be better off if we ignored these feminists and basically did what we're supposed to do, which is take young boys' enthusiasm and their strengths and their energy and their willingness to detach themselves from people and kill things and channel it into actual manhood as we understand the term here in America. I don't think it's ever been surpassed. Channel these young boys into men by giving them strong examples of why they have to behave themselves. And if you have that happen, then you're going to find that your men are happy because they know that they're using their powers for what they're supposed to be used for, which is for protection and civilization. And the women are happy because men are behaving like men and not behaving like children or women or boys or whatever. If you're a transgendered person out there and all of these stereotypes you have a problem with, let me just say this. When I say I don't care, it's not like I don't care what you think. It's like, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. You have the absolute right to live your life the way you want to live it. You have the absolute right to go and do whatever you want to, fall in love with the people you want to, do the jobs you want to. That's your absolute right, and I'll defend that to the death with the weapons that I have in my closet that my Russian fiance was quite surprised to see, but as she got to know me even better, began to realize they suit me rather well. There we go. All right, so boy, we're running this show. We always run so long. So hey, take a look at the screen back here because here's what you're going to miss, you Facebook, you fair weather Facebook friends. Hush money for Dem protests. There's an article, and we've got some evidence of these Russian hackers. It's those Russian hackers again. What are they constantly doing? Well, it turns out that, as in the case of the DNC emails, Russian hackers now threatened a number of these AstroTurf groups, these fake grassroots movements, threatened them with exposure unless they paid ransom money, so they paid the ransom money. That's pretty good evidence that there's something funny going on. Hey, listen, if you want to help us out here, I talk about membership all the time. I'm not going to talk about membership today. If you really want to help us out, though, you could follow this link to YouTube or go to YouTube and find Bill Whittle channel. You can search for Firewalls or whatever, but find Bill Whittle channel on YouTube and just subscribe. That's all. You don't need an email. You don't need anything. It's not going to bother you. You're not going to get messages coming in. You're just going to, it just means when you go to YouTube, there'll be pictures available and there'll be videos available. You won't miss anything. It helps us in terms of advertising and all the other revenues and stuff. So just go like us, go and subscribe to us on YouTube and also like us on Facebook, like and share this piece if you'd like, and also like our Facebook page. It's a way for us to monetize this. It's not like I need the the applause. I got over that. So hit the like button and the share button here on Facebook. If you have a chance to go over to BillWhittle.com, get a look at the videos over there. Go to our YouTube channel. Make sure it says Bill Whittle Channel. Hit subscribe. It's absolutely free. And if we have enough people doing that, then we don't have to worry about keeping these doors open so that we can continue to speak some common sense out there. Happy Women's Day to all of you ladies out there. And my deepest respects and admiration for everything that you do for us, no matter what the job is. So I think that'll do it for our Facebook segment. We're going to continue on with our members on our private secret YouTube channel, which is an undisclosed location. And we'll talk about the evidence for this particular latest string of hypocrisy and doom. All right, Facebook fans, we'll see you tomorrow on Thursday. Happy Women's Day to everybody out there. Push the button, Frank. Let's get into. I said put the button, Frank, because that's where it came from. Neil, it came from Mystery Science Theater 3000. Push the button, Neil. Let's go private with these folks. We'll see you guys tomorrow.